Hello and welcome back to another ProGuides Teamfight Tactics video. Today we're going to be talking about the most important part of TFT, economy. How many times have you been in a situation where you're left wondering whether it would be better for you to roll or save gold to level up? Or how many times have you wondered how other players seem to have so much gold so early? Well, by the end of this video, you should hopefully have those answers and a better grasp at managing your economy and all the gameplay decisions that come with it. But first, I'd like to remind you to click on the link below and take a look at the updated ProGuides.com if you want to learn more about teamfight tactics. ProGuides will always have info on the newest patches, best builds, and strategies. There are all kinds of different resources from top players to help you guys be the best players that you can be. So be sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link in the description. Now, let's get right back into the video. Economy, or ECON, simply refers to the amount of gold you're gaining each round. Gold is one of the most important resources in any game of TFT. You use it to buy champions, re-roll into new champions, and even level up. It goes without saying that a player who earns the most gold will probably have the best chance of winning. It would probably be best to fully understand how you earn gold in TFT. In between every round, you're given a base amount of gold, whether you won or lost the previous round, and whether you have 0 gold or 50 gold. This base gold amount starts off at 2 at round 2 and increases by 1 each of the following rounds, capping at 5 after round 5. For every 10 gold you have at the start of a round, you will gain an additional gold, capping at 5 additional gold for having 50 gold. You gain 1 additional gold for going on a win or loss streak of 2 or 3, 2 additional gold for a streak of 4 to 6, and 3 additional gold for a streak of 7 or longer. For every round you win, you gain 1 additional gold. During each creep round, you have a chance of gaining gold from drops instead of items. You can sell any level 1 champion and get gold equal to the cost of the unit. Any champ that's level 2 or higher and 2+ cost sells back for a reduced cost. If you have the 3 pirate synergy, you have a chance to gain 0 to 4 additional gold at the end of a round. This is the obvious use for gold, buying champions from your shop and adding them to your team or bench. If you don't like the champions in your shop or are looking for a specific champion, you can spend 2 gold to get 5 new champions in your shop. You can spend 4 gold to gain 4 EXP. Alright, now that we've gone over the ways we can earn gold and spend our gold, let's go over the ways we should earn and spend our gold. The early game is a very important time for your econ, and there are many directions and little decisions you can make to make the most out of your gold. In the first few rounds, it's very unlikely that you will earn any extra gold from interest, so it's usually best to buy every champ you can from your shop. This gives you more options and will give you an easier time finding a direction. However, re-rolling at this stage in the game is very rarely worth it. Depending on the items you picked up from the minion rounds and the champs that you've bought, you should decide whether you're going to be rolling after Krugs or playing the econ focus game. These are not the only options you have, but they're 2 vastly different playstyles that cover a lot of the fundamentals you should learn if you want to make the best decisions in your specific games. That's why we'll be using them as examples for this video. Hyper rolling is a popular strategy that involves saving up as much gold as possible until the start of stage 3 to 1, right before you hit level 5, and rolling it all away to find as many champs from your planned comp as you can. This means you should avoid rolling when possible. It's also very important that you don't spend gold on EXP when you're doing this strategy, because the whole point of the strategy is to roll before level 5 while you still have a higher chance of finding 1-cost champs. This gives you the best chance of upgrading your 1-cost champs to level 3. There are also a few small ways you can maximize your chances of seeing the champs you want to see and maximizing your gold gains for rolling down after Krugs. You should always pay attention to your gold at the end of a round and pay attention to the champs on your bench. If you have enough champs on your bench that you don't plan on using in your next comp that you can sell to reach the next interest breakpoint, i.e. you have 2 Elises on your bench and 18 gold, you should sell them because you effectively get 1 extra gold for selling them at this time. On the other hand, if you find that you don't have enough champs to sell to reach the next interest breakpoint, but you still have enough gold to buy a few champs in the shop while keeping your interest, i.e. you have 24 gold and there are 4 1-cost champs in the shop, you should buy as many champs as you can. By doing this, you're removing those champions from the pool and increasing your chances of seeing the champs you want to see, and you can always sell the champs back for the same price you paid for them, assuming they're not level 2 or higher 2+ cost champs. By having as many of the champs you want to see before going into stage 3 to 1, you're decreasing your need to roll as much. Instead of having to roll for 6 of a 1-cost champ, maybe you only need to roll for 2 or 3, and you get to have some gold after you hit your level 3s. So when should you go for this hyper rolling strategy? The best time to go for this strategy is when you're planning to go for a comp that relies on a lot of 1 or 2 cost champions. After all, the whole reasoning behind re-rolling before level 5 is that you still have a higher chance of finding 1-cost champs than anything else. If you find a few early level 2s from your comp, that's also a good sign that you can go for the strat. Additionally, your items should also affect this decision. Specific comps heavily rely on certain items. If you don't have the items to support a specific comp, it may not be worth the commitment and gold. You can't guarantee that you'll find the items later on, and your comp will just be so much weaker. Instead, it may be better to go for something that benefits from your current items. This strategy is also good for punishing players who are saving for levels and aren't committing as much to their team early on. However, you should also pay attention to other players' boards and make sure that many other players don't have the same plan as you, or else you'll have a hard time finding the champs you want. For the most part, this strategy plays a lot like the hyper rolling strat, except you're not going to re-roll after Krugs. You want to focus a lot on maximizing your gold gains early on. However, with this strat, you won't exactly have a hard set plan early on and might not be looking for any one-cost champs, so it's less important to worry about maximizing your chances of finding anything specific in the early game. Instead, your goal in the hard econ strat is to save gold to spend on levels earlier than your opponents and find higher quality champs. Earlier, we mentioned that gold is one of the most important resources. The only resource in TFT that's more important is HP, and it's very important that you recognize that HP is a resource. As long as you're not in kill range, you shouldn't be too worried about taking damage. If you're going for this strat, chances are you'll be taking some damage from players who are going for more aggressive starts while you're building up your econ. You generally should dedicate the minimum amount of gold to building up your team so that you can survive to the mid and late game. It's a good idea to only buy champs that may end up in your final composition, or generically good standalone champs like Nidalee and Pyke. One exception to this is if you're on a win streak. It's usually worth investing a little into your team early on if your team is relatively strong and you can preserve your win streak. Ultimately, the extra gold that you gain over a few turns from the streak will be more than you spent. So when should you go for the hard econ strategy? This is usually the best strategy when you have a relatively weak early game and haven't found any champions good enough to commit to early. In this situation, you generally want to level up and find higher quality champs to build around, so you should start saving up early. Another good time for this strategy is when you have a comp that relies on 4 or 5 cost champs. One example of this is nobles. Even though more than half of the nobles are 1 or 2 cost, and it may seem tempting to roll to get them level 3 after Krugs, they heavily rely on finding Leona and Kayle. Especially in the current meta, where those are highly contested champs, it's a much better idea to save for levels to increase your chances of finding them earlier than your opponents. Once you exit the early game, things get much more situational. If you did the hyper roll strat, you're probably really strong compared to your opponents and you're win streaking your econ backup. If you went hard econ in the early game, you're probably a few levels up on a lot of your opponents and are re-rolling looking for champs to base your team on or champs to finish out your comp. If your team is doing well at this point, you can continue picking up champs or slowly leveling. But how do we decide whether we're rolling for champs or leveling up? Sometimes this can be as simple as looking at the percentages. Using the noble example from the econ strat, if you're at level 6 looking for Kayle, you have a 0.5% chance of finding a 5 cost in any slot of your store. But if you were to level up to 7, you're 4 times as likely to find a 5 cost with a 2% chance. Other times, you have to take a look at your comp and think about whether you need more space to add another champ in order to complete a synergy, or if you need to replace a weaker champ with a stronger one. There aren't really any guidelines that can apply generally to this, but it is something that you'll pick up on with more experience. However, if you're taking too much damage or are sitting at a low health total, it might be time to go all in. This means you're going to spend your gold on rolling to find champs and levels in a last-ditch effort to make a working comp. There's no point in having 50 gold if you're just about to die before the next round, so it's important to recognize when you need to go all in if it would keep you in the game. It's also important to pay attention to your opponent's moves. If you see everyone else going all in, it's usually a good idea to do the same soon after to avoid falling even further behind. Of course, this may not be necessary if they had weak all-ins that still can't compete with you. A few extra tips. 1. Buying pairs is usually a good idea in the early game, regardless of your strat. 2. There is a limited number of each champion in the pool. Scouting is a good idea and can help influence your decision when thinking about rolling for a specific champion. 3. Interest is calculated at the start of the round. Even if you're away to carousel, you can sell your units using the hotkey, E by default, to get the additional interest when you get back to your board. 4. In mid or late game, picking up 5 cost champs is usually a good idea. It's even better if you can get a level 2 5 cost champ. The 5 cost champ doesn't necessarily need to synergize with your comp. They're just that good. And those are some of the main situations you'll find in any game of TFT. Every game will be different though, and it's just important to recognize these situations and figure out which path you'll take. With experience, these decisions will come to you much easier and you'll start making optimal econ plays without even having to think about it. But hopefully this answers a lot of questions you might have had at the start of this video. If you still have any more questions, be sure to leave a comment below, and feel free to leave any suggestions for future videos that you guys have as well. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit ProGuides.com to stay up to date on all things teamfight tactics. Good luck in your games, and we'll see you on the next one.